Next up on Sanctuary, the origins of the world's oldest interfaith gathering and its modern incarnation this month in Chicago.
Welcome to Sanctuary, bringing you conversation and stories at the intersection of life and faith. This edition of Sanctuary is produced in cooperation with the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Sanctuary. I'm Nisan Chavkin, Executive Director of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago. As many of you know, in 1893, Chicago hosted the World's Columbian Exposition. What many people don't know, however, is that the exposition featured the first convening of the World Parliament of Religions. This historic meeting of representatives from religions across the globe marked the beginning of the modern interfaith movement. This month, 130 years later, the Parliament of the World's Religions returns to Chicago, drawing thousands of participants from more than 200 diverse religious, indigenous, and secular beliefs, and more than 80 nations. Today on Sanctuary, we will speak with two leaders from the Parliament to learn more about that historic meeting in 1893 and the 2023 convening here in Chicago. The Reverend Stephen Avino is Executive Director of the Parliament of the World's Religions, and Swami Ishatmananda is President and Swami-in-Charge of the Vivekananda Vedanta Society of Chicago, and also a trustee of the Parliament. Gentlemen, welcome to Sanctuary. So glad you could make time for us today.
Glad to be here.
And this is such an exciting event. Stephen, you've literally been working on this for years, not quite all the way back to 1893, but if you could take us back to that particular gathering, what was the 1893 Parliament of World Religions? What was it all about?
So like you said, it was part of the 1893 World's Fair. It was actually done in conjunction with it at the Art Institute here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it was really the first time that religions from both the East and the West and all over the world came together to learn from one another on an equal footing, not to proselytize, not to judge one another, but just to learn from one another, learn about each other's faith, and come together in a harmonious way. And it actually ended up being, there were many parliaments that were held during the 1893 World's Fair. There was a Parliament of Science, there was a Parliament of Art, etc. And the Parliament of the World's Religions ended up being the thing that the press loved the most, that the press was the most interested in, and is the most famous out of all of those parliaments that happened in 1893. And it was really groundbreaking for its time.
How long did this parliament go? I mean, were they there for a year? Were they there for a day? How long was stuff?
It was 2 weeks.
Two weeks.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. And people, what happened? Were they in modern interfaith? We often have dialogue groups and little convocations. Was this just speeches, or was people having negotiations? What were they doing? Text study? What were they up to?
It was really everything, but I think primarily, especially in 1893, it was speeches. There were many speeches during the opening, and then over the next 2 weeks, people presented papers. There were delegates from all over the world, from East Asia to right here in Chicago, to Africa, to India. Who knows? You name it, they were there.
Wow. Okay. Well, Swami Ishatmananda, one of the runaway hits of the 1893 Parliament was the Hindu monk of India,
Correct.
Swami Vivekananda. Tell us about this man and his journey to Chicago, and then in a minute we'll talk about the impact he had on everybody, because he was the star. So
thank you for asking this question and giving me this opportunity to speak about Swami Vivekananda. He was a wandering monk. He was a disciple of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, and very in a unique way, this Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, he practiced all religions. Almost all the paths of Hinduism, among the Hinduism there are Tantra is there, those who worship power. Another is the Vaishnavism, another the Vedanta, all paths. And at the same time, he practiced Islam also, Sufism. He there in the temple itself, and still that place is there in Dakshinesha. And he also liked the Lord Jesus, and it said that Lord Jesus appeared before him, and he was looking at a picture of the mother and the little child Jesus, And then he saw the light coming and merging in his person. Then finally he declared, and that was the first time he said, all paths are leading to the same goal. If you are sincere in your own path, own belief, own faith, then you will reach to the same goal. And you will get the same peace and happiness from any religion, any paths. He taught this to Swami Vivekananda. He was the student of the Calcutta University. After the graduation, he came to him. He was a very good singer. So he used to come and sing as Sri Ramakrishna liked him. He was 17, 18 years old. And slowly taught him meditation and this knowledge. After the passing away of the Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, and Vivekananda started touring all over the India, every nook and corner. He used to travel on foot mostly. Sometimes people will be purchasing their train ticket and he will be traveling. By that way, so wandering monk, and he saw the plight of India. India, which was so rich that almost all the world is to try to reach to India, but under the subjugation of the foreign rulers, it has gone down so low. And that gave him too much, and he started crying and praying to God. And he said in one place, lo, the descendant of the rishis has gone to the next door, the brutes. They have become the next door neighbor to brutes. So he was thinking what to do. This is the first time a Hindu monk who crossed a part of the ocean swimming and went to a rock and sat over there 3 days and 3 nights without food, without water, meditating, only to find out the solution. And he heard his guru is mentioning, go to America. There you have to go and tell the people about it. So he was wondering, who will give the money?
Yeah.
And what is money?
How did he do that?
And America was unknown to India. Europe was known to India because Britishers were ruling, French was there, Germans were there, and people, our rich people, kings, they used to visit all these European countries. Europe, India knew, not about America. Only one American in that time in India, and that was Colonel Olcott. Yes, he was there in this, and Swami Vivekananda met him and wanted to know about America. They were not having any idea about the American weather and all. No one was having that. But only thing, Vivekananda was very fluent in English, as because he studied in Calcutta University and his professors were all either British or Dutch, and so obviously he learned very good English. And in those days, the monks never said English because it was a foreign language. So they used to speak only in Sanskrit or in their mother tongue. So some of the devotees, when this was published in the Hindu, the newspaper in Madras, still the paper is published even today. They published about the parliamentary religion. Then they told, you are the only person who knows about Hinduism and can speak English. You must go over there. And then he got the blessings of the Ma Saradamani Devi. And 3 kings, they came forward to help him. One from the south, one from the north, one from the west. And some ordinary people, they collected some fund and gave him some clothings. Because the monk usually, at the bare body, they will be roaming there. So they gave the clothings and whatever the possible way. From there, he came to from Japan to the Vancouver. He took the train. At 29 years, young man, not knowing anything where he is going, he took that. Then afterwards, he reached Chicago. And while traveling to Chicago, he met one lady, the Miss Sanborn, and she took interest and told, you are a very interesting personality. I never saw this type of feature before, an American Indian feature. So that was not Chinese they saw, but not the Indians. So if any time you think that you need my help, please contact me. Swami Vivekananda came in Chicago. It is so costly. And he reached 1 month before. and whatever the fund he was having, it was so he went to that lady in Boston, and there near the Boston, there's the Annisquam, that village. There he went, and first time in Annisquam, he spoke in a church. I visited that church, still it is there, the small little village church. He spoke over there, and there he met Professor John Wright of the Harvard University. The John Wright, he told, but you cannot go and speak in the parliament. You don't have any credentials. They have to invite you, then only you can go. Anyway, he wrote a letter, but when he was coming back, it was 9th September, he reached back, it was night, he was nowhere to go. He stayed in that station itself, and he lost that address that John Wright gave. What to do? He was walking all the way, and somehow he reached to one place. Still the church is there. It was from the morning he was walking, and he was exhausted, tired, without food. And he sat on that the steps of the church, and I always feel the miracle started happening in this unknown country. And very aristocratic lady, exactly opposite the road, she came, crossed the road, asked this young man, "Sir, are you a representative of the Parliament of Religion?" He said, "Mother," as usual we address in that way, "Mother, I wanted to be, but I don't have any credential." She told, "My husband, the Mr. W. Hell, he is a very influential person. He will be able to help you." 10th September, he was visiting different officers. Then finally, 10th September evening, he met the president of the, and he got the 5 minutes time. And 11th September morning, he was marching with another 9 famous religious leaders and entered over there. And you know what he addressed? He addressed only sisters and brothers of America.
And that made a big impression, huh?
Big impression.
Okay.
Very big impression.
Very exciting. In a moment, we're going to return and we'll talk a little about the impact of 1893, both about what this parliament sort of changed, and then we'll see what it has wrought 130 years later here in Chicago. We'll be right back.
Metropolitan Chicago is one of the most religiously diverse areas in the world, and for more than a half century, Sanctuary has reported and reflected on our faith-filled community. Sanctuary tells stories of faith from both inside our houses of worship to the streets and neighborhoods where faith is acted out every day with acts of kindness and concern. From food pantries to peace initiatives, from worship services to servicing the poor, Sanctuary has a proud history of reporting on the goodness that flows from our faith traditions. Watch Sanctuary every Sunday at 12 noon.
Welcome back to Sanctuary. I'm Nisan Chavkin, and we are talking today about the extraordinary Parliament of the World's Religions. Now, we've been talking about the 1893 the original Parliament in 1893, and I just wanted to touch on that one last thing with Stephen to see what kind of impact it was, and then we're going to jump to the Parliament, modern Parliament, being reborn in 1993, a century later here in Chicago. So Stephen, what changed, if anything, after that Parliament? It seems like it set us on a different path. How would you characterize its impact?
Well, there were a number of things that changed. It really was the first time that Eastern traditions Americans became aware of them on a large scale. For example, I believe it's the first time the Baha'is were ever mentioned in a public setting in the United States. 2 decades later, maybe less than that, we have the Baha'i Temple up in Wilmette here in Chicago. Yoga was introduced through the Parliament.
Wow.
In some sense, it changed the way that Christians thought about other traditions. Christians as the majority religion in the United States. But in other ways, some things didn't change. I know that Paul Karras, who was a speaker at the Parliament, fought very hard to have another Parliament very soon after 1893, and there was a lot of resistance to that. And there was another Parliament, but it wasn't for a very long time after that.
It was 100 years later,
Yes.
right? And so it came, and they decided we were going to have a centennial of the original Parliament in 1993. It was also held in Chicago. How did that get started? How did that get us where we are? And then how do we do it from here on in? Do we have a Parliament every year? Is it always in Chicago? What goes into the modern Parliament?
So the 1993 Parliament, which is what you're talking about, actually in the late 80s, a group of religious leaders, I think led by the Vivekananda Vedanta Society, came together and decided that this was something that we really needed to celebrate the 100th anniversary of. And so in Chicago, the 1993 Parliament happened. It was a huge success. Ended with the Dalai Lama in Grant Park. Thousands of religious leaders, not just religious leaders, lay people, religious leaders, everyone in between that came together and really made a tremendous event here in Chicago. And since then, every few years, we have parliaments around the world.
So it moves from one place to another?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Where
yes.
has it been?
So in 1999, it was held in Cape Town, South Africa. In 2004, in Barcelona, Spain. 2009, in Melbourne, Australia. 2015, in Salt Lake City. And 2018, in Toronto. In 2021, a couple years ago during the pandemic, we had a virtual parliament. And this next month, this August, it'll be here in Chicago again.
In August? It's, this month it's going to be in Chicago, and it's going to be, who's coming? Can you tell us? In terms of how many people are coming, and I assume it's all the traditions of the world will be there, yes?
Yes, over 218 different religious and spiritual traditions are represented, and between 6,000 and 10,000 people are expected to attend. It's going to be very, very big. It's at McCormick Place this year, August 14th to 18th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so tremendous and exciting. And what will take place at this Parliament? How is it like the original Parliament, and how is it different?
So it's inspired by the original Parliament. Certainly we will have religious leaders speaking on their own traditions. Mm-hmm. But what the interfaith movement has grown into over the years is more of we learn about each other's traditions, we respect each other's traditions, but we also want to work on making the world better. So our theme this year is a call to conscience, defending freedom and human rights. And this is the theme that all of our programs will be addressing in some way or another. We'll be focusing on climate action, women's rights, indigenous people's rights, the next generation, and freedom and human rights for all, really. And we're actually going to start on August 13th with a parade. Our opening ceremony is on August 14th, and we will end on August 18th this year.
And Swami, you're going to be participating in the Parliament as well?
Yes.
And are all these things, mentioned there are going to be some big speeches, but there are also going to be a lot of smaller things where people can have. What are those? What is this? If I walked into this conference, what does it look like?
So there's really everything that you can think of. There's an exhibit hall. There will be our main stage sessions where we have these big speeches, as you call them. We will also have religious ritual. We'll have faith rooms. We will have breakout sessions, workshops, both workshops that are more interactive, but also lectures and group discussions. Everything you can think of really happens at parliaments. It's really a one-of-a-kind experience.
Oh, that's wonderful, and it's for people. It's for people like you, but is it for everyday people as well, or is it just for religious leaders? Who
It's
gets
both
to-
and.
Both
Both
and.
and.
Okay.
We welcome everyone.
Okay. And so,
children also, yeah.
Children as
tell
well.
me about the children's program. That's exciting. What will be happening for children? What will be taking place?
So we will have children's programming throughout the event. We're calling it the Kids of Power program, POWR, and it will be happening in the lobby of McCormick Place, Lakeside Center. And there's lots of things where children can learn about each other's traditions, but also really important values that we all of the traditions share.
Right, and I think the ethic is when you talk about all these traditions. How do we know? Is there? I think it's the ethic. What's it called?
Global ethic.
Global ethic. Could you tell us about that? Because it's an example of all these traditions trying to find common ground so that you can, as you say, we can all work together to address common issues. So tell us about that, because it seems to have particular importance.
Sure. It's actually the 30th anniversary of the global ethic, which came about in 1993. Scholars from many different traditions came together at that parliament and looked at what do our traditions all agree are foundational ethical principles. And they came up with a document. It's called Towards the Global Ethic. And in it, you will find what all of the different traditions would agree on is what's important to make a better world.
Well, it's remarkable. How long or short is this document?
It's not very long, 4 to 5 pages about.
But a lot of things that people found that they could agree on, which is stupendous. And so when we say that we're teaching something that the values that we all agree on, we've all actually have all agreed on these particular things. Very exciting, very exciting. And is there other particular features? Are they, our city is home to everybody's faith tradition, or lots of traditions from all over the world. Are they going out to visit our local congregations? Are our local congregations helping out with the parliament? How does that work?
Absolutely. There'll be actually sacred space tours during the event where people can go on trolleys from McCormick Place and visit different communities in the city. We will also have opportunities actually on Friday, August 18th, to do different community service projects that people that come to the parliament can join and be a part of. And so it's definitely going to be something that's both a convention center, but also something for the entire community.
Out in the community,
yeah.
That's great. And Vedanta will have are people coming in from all over the Vedanta community from all over the world as well?
Actually, from our headquarters, Belur Math, the one Swamiji is coming. He is the Assistant General Secretary. And 3 Swamis from here, one from Toronto, one from Boston, and from New York. They will be coming, and we will have a standout program on the same theme through the Vedantic view. And we'll have a bookstall also.
Oh, cool. So if people wanted to learn more about Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever tradition they're interested in, there'll be a place where they can buy books as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is terrific. And that sounds so exciting. The parade will be where? Where should we go for the parade? Do we know yet?
So the parade will be August 13th. It'll be from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It will start at Adler Planetarium, and we will go from there south toward McCormick Place.
Great. So to the convention center.
To the convention center.
Terrific, terrific. And is there, how would you describe this as different from the old Parliament? What's an innovation that have we learned anything in the last 130 years or so that we do differently now than we used to do then?
Oh, there's a number of things. One thing is, and I think this has been true of all of the modern parliaments, is yes, religious leaders come, but it's also something for everyone. It's more inclusive than it, and there's different traditions that were not represented in 1893 that have been represented in the modern parliaments. This year, I think we're really focusing on our theme, A Call to Conscience, Defending Freedom and Human Rights, and how faith traditions should stand up for each other's rights, which I think is not something that we've done before in the past.
Got it.
So this is it was the America that the first time they convened that the World Parliament to Religion. Our main, the civilization, human civilization is 10,000 years old, and it was in 1893, first time the platform was in America and in Chicago. So it needed the broad-mindedness. And when they came, all these religious people, they were not knowing each other. And they were also thinking what actually going to happen. Afterwards, after all these years, naturally it has really spreaded and people are understanding. And science has also developed. So we know each other every corner. I will like to give you that information. The last year in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, after 1,500 years, in Saudi Arabia, the heartland of Islam, they organized the parliamentary religion. They invited all the religious faiths over there. So that's why it's
So it's an example of how we do know each other a little better now than we used to do, which is exciting indeed.
And two big clubs are there. That's a very rich people's club. One is the Lions Club and Rotary Club. You must be knowing the International Rotary Club and the International Lions Club. After the 1893 Parliament, they came up. And those two founders were also from Chicago.
Oh.
That is also the influence of the Parliament.
Of the Parliament. Interesting indeed. Yeah, which are now great
and
service
their
clubs all
motto
over the
is,
world.
you fast than me. I should serve you. I should know you. These are the two clubs. That also, I think, that is the influence. And most of the places also, they started reading about others. And influence of the success of Vivekananda in this completely changed the psyche of Indian populations. That is a unique thing. India was under the subjugation of the Britishers, and that was the first time they felt they have something. And Vedanta is nothing but self-confidence, and America gave that also.
So this Parliament of 1893, this little 2-week gathering, seems to have had some remarkable consequences. And we're certainly enjoying this month here in Chicago its return to where it was born and where it began.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can, 130 years from now, say that we did our part and we made our contribution and brought the world a little closer to those themes which we all embrace. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your time today. You can find out more about the 2023 convening of the Parliament of the World's Religions at the web link that appears on your screen. I want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Sanctuary. And until next time, peace.
Metropolitan Chicago is one of the most religiously diverse areas in the world, and for more than a half-century, Sanctuary has reported and reflected on our faith-filled community. Sanctuary tells stories of faith from both inside our houses of worship to the streets and neighborhoods where faith is acted out every day with acts of kindness and concern. From food pantries to peace initiatives, from worship services to servicing the poor, Sanctuary has a proud history of reporting on the goodness that flows from our faith traditions. Watch Sanctuary every Sunday at 12 noon